Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the third episode in our community conversation series, Housing a Gothic Tale, partnership between the Welcome Home Atlanta team, powered by Keller Williams First Atlanta, and Aurora Theatre, related to the production of Feeding Beatrice by Kirsten Greenidge. Today, we are super honored to have Mary Melvin with us, and she is the Division Director for Fair Housing at the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Mary. If you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments to unpack, it sounds like such a illustrious title, and I know it's important work that you're doing, but if you could unpack that just a little bit in terms of what it is that you're actually overseeing and the things that you're responsible for, and how that integrates with a larger sense of the Commission on Equal Opportunity.
Okay. So, yeah, my title is Division Director for Fair Housing. But before I get into that, I want to give you a snapshot of what Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity looks like and why we have that title. Because I know it's a mouthful, it's a lot, but we're representing some important laws. So it's two parts to our house, so to speak. We have the fair housing side and we have the equal opportunity side. So we are supported by two federal agencies. The equal opportunity is obviously equal opportunity for the federal side. And then for us in the fair housing, we're being supported by HUD. So not only do we go according to, we enforce the laws through our federal laws, like for my side is the Fair Housing Act. But we also enforce it along with the Georgia Fair Housing Act, Georgia Fair Housing Law. And so they look pretty much identical, but it's just an extra layer of protection for Georgians to make sure that they're able to compete in the world of residential living, because we only investigate sale and rentals of residential housing. That's one thing I want to tell you. So when it comes to commercial, we can't investigate that, but we will investigate sale and rentals of residential units or housing.
Great. Thank you for that. It's incredible to know that we have advocates and champions on that side of policy that are really looking out for people. Michael, tell us a little bit about where we think the scope of this conversation is going to go.
Yeah, so as you know, if you've been following this series of conversations, we've started with episode 1, where we unpacked the past and the history. We unpacked policies, we unpacked a lot of the divisive and biased federal, state, and local policies that caused and prohibited a lot of people of color and Black individuals from procuring the American dream in home ownership. And then we had a great conversation in episode 2, where we started talking about what is the current state of affairs. We had a great conversation with Kanika White, a realtor in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we unpacked a little bit about gentrification and the influx and the egress of individuals out of predominantly Black communities. We talked about slum clearance and slum creation. We talked about a lot of different things. And now today, what we would love to talk about as we go into this conversation with you today, Mary, is really helping us to understand fair housing, affordable housing. And we really want to clear up a lot of the myths, a lot of the misnomers, a lot of the misconceptions around fair housing and affordable housing, and also to get an understanding of what current policies are in place and what current protections are in place for people, as well as just get an overall understanding for consumers as to what does that mean for me if I'm a homeowner,
or seeking
to be a homeowner, right? What does that mean for me? What does fair and affordable housing mean? So that's where we're going to be kind of navigating in our conversation today. And it's, I feel free at any point to just chime in, just let us know what your thoughts are and your experience, leaning on you to educate us in this space.
So where I would like to begin is probably just basic and fundamental. If you could just help unpack, what is fair housing, Mary? What is, and how does that relate to the idea of affordable housing? Is it the same thing? what is it? Because again, I think a lot of people may understand from their history lessons, the Fair Housing Act of 1968, but what does it actually, and what is it meant to do?
Okay. Well, let me just tell you this. First of all, I heard you ask about fair housing, and I heard you ask about affordable housing.
Right.
Well, with Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, we do not have the opportunity or the jurisdiction to do anything with affordable housing.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we only, our purpose is to investigate allegations of discrimination when it comes to residential housing, whether it's sales or rental.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And believe it or not, there are a lot of times when people will call our office and become very frustrated because they're in a crisis. Right then, in that moment when they're calling, they're being evicted or some kind of crisis is going on. And so it's our job to let them know whether we can help them or not. Mm-hmm. And what we also like to do is let them know, hey, we can't help you because we don't have jurisdiction over what your concern is. But let me tell you who can help you. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge thing that our intake staff do every day. And speaking of intake staff, you asked what do I do and all that. So my team consists of intake staff and investigators. So what happens is, say you go to an apartment complex, you want to rent an apartment, and you feel that for whatever reason, the apartment wasn't rented to you. Say you're thinking that it's because you noticed that maybe all the staff, say you're African-American, and all the staff in the apartment office, the property manager's office, are white or Latino, not Black. And you're standing there, you're asking for an application. Then you notice maybe online that they're advertising that they're accepting applications. You get there and they tell you, oh, we're not accepting applications, we're full. That's the situation that you need to be concerned about.
Right.
Something like that. So something like that, we would have jurisdiction over. And that person would contact our office, would contact our intake, or they could go online and fill out an application, a complaint form, saying exactly what happened. And that intake person will look at the information, will call that person, will ask more questions, get all the pertinent information. And once they receive all the information, if that case is something that we can enforce, then that intake person will send that case to me. I will look at it and make sure, again, that's something we can enforce. Right. And then I will assign an investigator to it, and that investigator will investigate the case. If there's evidence to substantiate that case, to support the allegation, then it's what we call a cause case. Okay. If it's not, then it's a no cause. And if it is a cause case, then we will talk to our Attorney General's office and pursue, taking this person to court and understanding what happened, let them know what the facts are about fair housing. Now, all along, we also do this thing called conciliation. And it looks and sounds a lot like mediation. And I'm sure as realtors, you know what conciliation is.
Right.
But to tell everyone, it's a time where we ask the parties if they want to voluntarily talk about how can they come to an agreement with this case, and so the case won't have to continue to be investigated. In that particular example that I gave you, conciliation could be something like offering them the opportunity to apply for the apartment.
Gotcha.
Now, obviously, they can't promise that person that they'll get the apartment because they still have to make sure they meet.
Right.
Okay, they still need to be able to meet all the expectations, but conciliation could be offering them that opportunity. That's kind of long and short of how a case could go.
That makes sense, though. Do you find that there is a huge difference, or maybe probably hard to put a percentage to, do you tend to get more complaints when it comes through a leasing situation, or do you get just as many complaints through a buying situation?
More leasing than buying. And I think because here again, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes people just don't realize that they have protection. You know, they may come into a situation where, say, go into a neighborhood. Now, my husband and I, we just bought a house. So all this buying house stuff is very fresh in my mind. That's why you're looking at a blank wall, because
I love it.
Where I would put my pictures at, okay?
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So you may go into a neighborhood. This really happened to us. We went into a neighborhood and we noticed that it was predominantly white. And we looked at the house and I liked the house. My husband liked the house. We put a bid on the house. We didn't get it. We found out later, because of what I do for a living, I'm not going to just stop. I'm going to look.
Right.
I'm an investigator by nature. I have to look. I noticed that the house sold for less. I really could have had a case, but I did not pursue it. I know that the house sold for less than what we offered, than our bid. I noticed that it sold to a white couple. And that was the basis for a case. I didn't pursue it.
Yeah.
But that was the basis for a case.
Yeah. And what I would love to talk about in this, in this instance, because again, being realtors and being in such a competitive market, right? We learned, and the concept or the notion of love letters, right? When it comes to buying real estate, residential real estate, right? And how love letters are that it's a very fine and very thin, like hairline of being acceptable and crossing that threshold. Can you talk a little bit about those love letters and just fair housing, how that interacts and how that might show up in a fair housing situation like this?
Tell me more about the love letter language.
So really with love letters, what used to be almost widely acceptable, even not 2 years ago or more, people would, buyers typically would write a letter to the seller.
I got you.
Saying, oh, I love your home so much, and this and that or the other. Yeah. So because we have protected classes and there are protections under fair housing, you can't just say anything in those letters.
It's illegal.
Right?
It's illegal.
Absolutely.
It's illegal. Because you are taking it's not equal playing field at that point.
Right.
So someone actually advised my husband how to do that. And I talked to my realtor, she was dynamic. So y'all would be proud of your colleague. She said, no, we cannot do that. That is illegal.
Yeah, because I think what happens, unfortunately, is a lot of people step over the line into that realm of, I'm going to disclose my race, my gender, my family status, job status, all kinds of things that are protected that otherwise should not be wrapped up in the terms of a transaction.
Exactly.
Because you never know. And that like you were saying, on the one hand, yes, it could be beneficial. On the other hand, it could be deeply detrimental, and you never know how that's going to play out.
You don't want to.
Exactly. You don't know who that seller is typically, and you don't know how that listing agent is going to present those offers.
Exactly.
Right.
And speaking of seller, so that same house that I was talking about, we noticed that the seller, the agent last name, walking around the house, looking at the house, and you know how when you buy a house, how you might put your name in the concrete when it's laid in the court. We noticed that the same last name was in the concrete. But that wasn't disclosed that there was a relative.
That is
a no.
That is a no.
So we had all kinds of factors there that we could, but I said, you know what? I guess they either got lucky or unlucky, because I could have pursued it and it would have been in my office.
Absolutely. Well, but you know what? I hope you're in a home that you love.
Right I am. And that's why I said, you know what? This is not the neighborhood for us. I don't want this fight. So I'm going to leave it alone. But a lot of people, the reason that the numbers are higher for rentals than it is for buying is because a lot of people don't realize their rights. And I certainly had everything laid out for me to most likely have a cause case, but I chose not to pursue it. But some people don't know that they can pursue it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, off of that, Mary, can you tell us a little bit about what those rights are? Can you tell us first what those protected classes are for everyone who doesn't know what the protected classes are? And then can you also tell us a little bit about those rights and those protections that are available to us?
Yes. So, and what I'm going to do, the reason I'm looking to my right, is because what I'd like to do is I want to give you a website that is so helpful for people. And this is something that we give people a lot of times. There's a website called, let me see, what is the actual, I have it bookmarked, so.
No worries. And what's great is while you're looking for that, we will let our viewers know that we will incorporate that into the show notes.
Good.
And I'll make sure it's on our resource landing page.
And I can send you a link if you want me to.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. So it's under the Georgia Community Affairs. And that is, number one, an agency that we send a lot of people to when they call about landlord tenants, because that's not under our jurisdiction.
Got it.
And I want to read this to you. Only reason I want to read it to you, obviously I know what the classes are, but I want to read this to you because this is exactly what we do for complaints when they call and they're not sure about if they're calling to the right place, or even after we let them know that they're calling to the wrong place, and they are still wanting us to serve them.
Sure.
Okay? And so this is what we read to them because it's so clear, and I want to say it on air. The Georgia Fair Housing Act was passed to ensure all Georgians can compete for housing within their economic means on a fair and equitable basis. It prohibits discrimination in housing and housing-related activities because of disability, race, sex, color, national origin, religion, and familial status. And the only reason I'm reading it is because that's exactly what people need to hear.
Absolutely.
When they're calling. You know, nothing more, nothing less at that moment, because they need to understand that if you fall under one of those protected classes and you feel you've been discriminated against and your situation is one that we have enforcement over, we will certainly, you know, maintain our neutrality throughout the whole investigation, and we will find out whether there's evidence to support the allegation or not. And that's our position, you know, and while we are thankful to be able to serve in this capacity to help people understand you don't have to be mistreated, you know, there are protections for you, as long as your issue is something that we have jurisdiction over. And if it's not, you know, I said it a million times, but we will truly send you to who can help you. You know, we're not the one-stop shop. Right. I wish we could help do more, but things like landlord tenant, you know, we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And some people, you know, people have been sick and maybe their spouse passed away, or, you know, someone in their family passed away, and which changed their income. And they're not able to maintain their level of living, maybe, you know, and so unfortunately, they may be getting evicted because they can't pay their rent. Well, that's a really sad story, and it's a real story. But unfortunately, guess what? We can't invest. There's nothing that we can investigate. And they'll say, "Well, this is not fair. This is you know, you're in the fair housing business." True, but landlord tenants is not something that we can investigate. We don't have enforcement over. Right. We can tell you who can help you. Community affairs can help you.
Right.
You know, Metro Fair Housing can help you. There are different places, different agencies that can help you with landlord tenant, but we're not one of them that can.
And now I do have a question for you, Mary. In that definition you just read, it mentioned housing and housing related activities. We've read a series of articles, and unfortunately, it is still as of late in 2022, with bad appraisals because of the
Have you had any complaints from homeowners or potential buyers as it relates to appraisals that were obviously skewed based on some perception of a protected class?
And is that something that they can come to you for?
Right, that is something they can come to us for. I have not been able to, I have not had an opportunity to investigate that kind of situation, but I know about it, and we do have jurisdiction over that, and we can investigate that. HUD actually provided training for us so that we can be more aware of situations like that. So yeah, it happens. It happens a lot, evidently, but
and
I guarantee you,
a lot of people, they don't, again, speaking to this, I don't know that I have someone that I could go to be an advocate. That's great for us to know. I mean, we've literally, in maybe the last month and a half, just in based on previous listing that we had in a particular neighborhood, we had 2 of those residents say, we recently had an appraisal and these numbers, they don't add up. And we, everything that we know about the value of the property, we're like, this doesn't seem right either.
Mary, I'm an investigator too by nature. I was like, look, something's not adding up. Something's not right.
Something in the milk ain't clean.
Right. Well, trust me, when we in the process of buying our home, I was looking at that appraisal real close. It hadn't been that long ago that I participated in that training to be aware of such a discrimination act and discriminatory act. And so I looked at the houses they compared and everything. And I noticed that, one or two of them looked a little like, you comparing my house to that house? I don't know about that. But overall it was okay. But one or two of the houses I was very suspicious. A little suspect. But yeah, people just don't know that is a protection. They have protection over that.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what I'm already learning from you is, even though we sometimes seem to conflate this idea of fair housing and affordable housing, they are two separate issues. They're related, but separate when it comes to enforcement. And you are leaning specifically into the fair and equitable, basically like access and treatment, right?
Exactly.
So we can't help to sort of not even set prices, but speak into pricing or that kind of stuff. It's more so, is there an equitable atmosphere and equal access happening, all things considered, for everyone?
Correct. Now, one of the things that I will tell you that is a huge issue is steering.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, Mary.
Please speak on
that is a big issue. Before I moved to Georgia, I worked in North Carolina at the Human Relations Commission.
Yeah.
And I saw more steering there as an investigator than I've seen here. Not to say that it's not going on. I'm sure it is. But what I would see a lot of times is families with children, with a lot of children, would get encouraged to rent an apartment near the pool area, in the back of the building, in the back of the property, things like that. I've investigated several cases like that because the property manager does not want potential, renters to come in and see bikes or scooters and whatever else out. They want to be able to drive through their property and look pretty, and in the back somewhere you might see all those toys and everything. Steering is a big thing. And I'm sure you probably see it as a realtor, you probably see,
absolutely.
We don't want, we can sell you this house over here, no, I want this house.
Well, and it's curious because that breaks every kind of fiduciary responsibility that you have to your client, because then it becomes self-serving, right?
Yes.
Whether you're steering them based on, well, what if I push you towards the higher end of your
Price point
approval,
of your approval amount,
which means it's a different neighborhood, a different area, but I know I'm going to get a better commission based on that steer.
Right.
Or for own self-serving purposes,
Right.
it's the neighborhood that I live in, or people that I know that live there that they don't want fill in the blank living in that neighborhood.
Exactly.
Right. You know what I mean? And that's, we definitely cannot do that at all.
Right.
The other thing too, and what we're finding, because of the competitiveness of the market right now, there are those on the listing side that are consistently reducing their commissions.
Yes.
So what ends up happening is there are some buyers agents that will refuse to show houses or even send houses to clients that they might actually love,
right,
because they're not going to get their full 3%, which is kind of the commission rate.
Right.
Reduced to 2.5. So you know what, Susie Joe, I'm not going to even send you that house, even though I know it's a perfect match, because I'm making money.
Right.
Which is
Steering
another
huge
example.
issue.
It's like financial steering, not so much steering because of
demographics,
but it's still steering.
It's still steering. Right.
I have a question for you, Mary. Mm-hmm. So we have a situation going on right now, and I'm not going to disclose names for protection of the clients, but we are actually working with a lender, and I will say this, like, not in state right now, but they are licensed in the state of Georgia.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
a lot of them.
There has been, in terms of some conversations back and forth with this lender, some language that is a bit incendiary, a little inflammatory, and just flags like, I think there is some unconscious bias at work here. And I'm not saying that maybe there is or is not grounds for something. And the truth is, like, at the end of the day, like, we've got to get this client to closing because they're under a deadline. But the way that we've gotten through this trajectory has not been all peaches. Is there any kind of, do you ever have any of those complaints when it comes to lenders or attorneys or other vendors, not just realtors, not just property managers, but other parties related to real estate?
Well, when you say other parties related to real estate, exactly what you're talking about.
Meaning, so like a lender would fall in that category, a closing attorney, an inspector, an appraiser, some kind of vendor who's, a plumber, electrician, but obviously they're related to the housing industry, but they may not be the person selling you the home. You know what I mean?
All right. So this is how I'm trying to answer that question best possible without knowing more information.
Sure.
But one of the issues that we investigate is discriminatory statements. Okay. And I'm gonna give you this example, and hopefully we can circle back to what you're saying.
Right.
A discriminatory statement could be something like, say I am a renter in an apartment complex, and I need I'm asking the property manager to give me a walkway. I'm just trying to think of something.
Sure, because of it.
Walkway between right. And the person that makes a decision. Okay. See, a plumber might not make a decision. They could make a discriminatory statement, and they might make that person's living uncomfortable for them. Okay. And that person could maybe tell that owner or that property manager who makes a decision about it. And if they don't do anything about it, then that's an issue.
Got it. Okay.
But so back to my example. And I'm asking for reasonable modification. I'm asking you to put a ramp there. And you, the property manager who makes the decision, might say, you don't look like you need no ramp to me. You look like you're walking fine to me. I don't see nothing wrong with you. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Or, anything close to trying to act like that person's doctor is wrong.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it does, because even saying it provides a little bit of clarity. It may not even necessarily be that individual that is, it's wrong for them to say whatever they're saying.
Right.
But they may not be the person to submit that complaint to, because they the one sort of creating the full-blown approval. Someone else is making a decision for that client. The other person's just facilitating it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Like for example,
the buck would stop back with whoever's the decision maker.
Exactly.
Got it.
Like for an attorney. So say a situation came up where an attorney is speaking for their client. Say for maybe they're the attorney for the HOA.
Right.
And the HOA made a decision about something that the resident, which would be turned into the complainant, did not appreciate, did not like, or whatever, and thought maybe they're being discriminated against.
Gotcha.
Okay, so when we do our paperwork, if that attorney was making a statement as doing their job, then doing what the respondents asked them to do, what they're being paid to do, then the respondents they're still, like say the president of the HOA.
Right.
That person would still be that person held accountable and not that attorney. Because they're being paid to make that decision, to make it known.
Yeah.
But they didn't make the decision themselves.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. They're merely acting on behalf of.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mary, this is a great conversation. I am learning so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and speak with us because, this is, when you go through the process of getting your real estate license, we go through modules on, fair housing and the Fair Housing Act, the protected classes, and, we talk about steering and block busting, and we kind of do, but it's, very, very quick, like overview, right? But when you start actually becoming a practitioner,
right,
and you start working and you start meeting people and you start actually applying the skills, right? It's this knowledge, and it's this that I think is the missing component in our industry, right? Of when we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, all of these different things. It is not something we skim over or skate by. Like these are important classes and important things to consider. So I just want to thank you before we jump back in for just taking the time to share your, experience and educating us for sure.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. It's been fun.
So there are what I'm really gleaning in this conversation so far is yes, there are blatant broad stroke things that are easily identifiable as yes, we can identify and support and advocate for these things. But I'm also realizing, and I think we all know this just from life, that there are thousands of microaggressions, like thousands of like paper cuts
really
that
subtle
happen along the way. And then my question is, how do you get to a point where those have stacked up enough to justify an inquiry or some type of formal complaint? And I guess it depends on the specific situation and all of that jazz.
It does.
But I don't know if you have anything to speak into on that or because what we try to be very mindful of is our clients just feeling and experience. And they're ever experiencing something that doesn't feel fair, that doesn't feel equitable, that doesn't feel accessible, again, outside of the list of pricing, that's its a whole other thing.
Right.
What are things that we can do as practitioners, either for our clients or for other people? And this is where it gets tricky because I can't counsel someone who is exclusively represented by somebody else.
Exactly.
But how could, I guess I could talk to that agent if I experience something or see something or hear something. But what could we do in that realm of serving our clients better as realtors, but also things that we just pick up in the industry or things that we come across in phone conversations or emails or whatever, the way to say, no, we're putting the kibosh on that because that's illegal.
Right. Well, that's number one.
Yeah.
Speaking up, things that for a fact that are illegal, speak up, let them know that I'm not going to be a part of that, nor should you be a part of that. And refer people back to the Georgia Fair Housing Law.
I'm referring back to that statement that you just shared with us.
And that's exactly why I read it. That's exactly why I read it, because, it's so concise. It's so direct and to the point. If I sat here and told you that off the top of my head, I'm probably going to give you extra information.
Sure.
I'm probably going to throw some things in there because, from being an investigator for so long and now, directing a division that teaching other investigators how to investigate and helping the intake do their part. It's so many things that come to my mind when I started talking about incidents of unfair housing, or at least allegations of, you know. So when you read something that to the point, it has to bring you some kind of clear understanding of exactly what fair housing is. No extra, just straight to the point, you know. And and so what can you do? You know, you can encourage people to contact us for fair housing trainings. I'm scheduled to do one. My director and we're going to do one for an agency up in Athens on the 31st. That's a huge thing. And my goal is that I'm hoping that at some point, all the investigators, and we only have 4 right now, eventually we'll have more, but all of them would be able to go out and teach fair housing all across the state.
Absolutely.
That's the goal. Right now, it's just the director and I, but the goal is to be able to educate people on what fair housing is. You know, I used to have cases where I would investigate fair housing case, and believe it or not, the respondents would, you know, people that's been accused, they would end up saying, well, you know, Mary, can you come back and teach us fair housing, because this was not intentional, you know? So a lot of times things happen and people are really not intending to be discriminatory. A lot of time, of course, you know, you're gonna have the blatant, you know, things that happen, but sometimes, especially when you have people we call the mom and pops, you know, the small business owners that they might have like 1 or 2 houses, or they might just have 1 house, you know, or, you know, and it's not really their business, but they rent a house. And some of the smaller towns, they're used to just kind of doing what they want to do. And somebody might come from out of town, not used to their norm, and they might look different. They might have whatever's going on with them. And that person that owned that house, they might not want to rent to that person.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, I'm not going to rent to you. We know that's illegal.
Yep.
But that's something they've been getting away with for years because no one challenged them. Okay. But this person is maybe coming from a different state and saying, I want to rent this house. And they might meet all the expectations to be able to rent. And the respondent, they're looking at them. They know that they are African American, you know, they know that they're disabled or whatever. They know that they have a maybe the potential tenant told them, well, I have a dog here and I need this dog to, you know, for my emotional support. It's my emotional support animal.
Right.
And that person may say, well, no, you can't have no animal in my house. I'm not having no pets. They don't realize that this person needs this animal and it's not a pet anymore. It's an emotional support. That's a whole nother realm of things. That's another conversation we could have on another day about emotional support animals and how important it is for a person's life, and how, you know, a lot of times people are discriminated against because of that.
I have a question when it comes to loan types. I don't know if you deal with this at all, because
we don't often, but we can.
Right. You know, because of the competitiveness of the market right now, obviously we're seeing cash is king. That seems to be the way things are, right?
I know.
Or a very strong, stable conventional loan. We have lots of clients who also qualify for an FHA or a VA because of their vet status. And I'm always curious. And again, I don't know if there's really ever any way to prove it, because there's often so many offers on houses these days, 15, 20, 30 offers. But I do wonder sometimes if having certain clients that are classified a certain way, does that create its own perceived stigma on the other side, right? Because FHA is perceived as being it's not as stable because it has to be, you know, backed up by HUD. It's not as it's not as flexible as, you know, another loan type. Or with VA loans, because the VA doesn't want their vets living in squalor or some kind of unsafe condition, they have a few more hoops to jump through in terms of making sure a house is ready and habitable. So sometimes that closing can take a little bit longer. And when you put that into an arena with people that are making offers on homes that either are all cash or have a conventional loan, again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm always curious, like, how do we know that that wasn't the thing that tanked the deal? You know what I mean?
Just, that is a really, that's tough. Because here again, I'm coming from so many points of view. I'm coming from somebody that just bought a house.
Yep.
Just went through all of that, had about 3 or 4 bids not to make it.
Right.
And wondering each time, well, why didn't we make it? We qualified, why
you probably went over list, you know what I mean?
We went over.
Yeah.
We had to go over with this economy, we had to go over.
Yeah.
Why didn't we make it? So, and I'm someone that knows fair housing.
Right.
Imagine people that do not know.
Right.
So it is a tough thing to prove. But if the information is available somehow to find out whether they were actually discriminated or not, if it's there, we could find it. But that would be tough. It would be tough. But if someone come up and say, I believe I've been discriminated against because of the type of loan that I have, or the fact that I could not get the loan that I was trying to get, then we would investigate it.
Got it.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you, Mary. And so we're having these community conversations based off of a play that Aurora's putting on called Feeding Beatrice. And in that play, a Black couple, June and Lurie, they move into an all-white suburb in Boston.
Okay.
And in our first episode, we talked about, things about redlining. We talked about some of the restrictive deeds and covenants that communities had in place that prohibited certain people from not being allowed to purchase in those neighborhoods.
Yes.
And what I would love for you to just kind of quickly unpack for us is, for people who don't know, right? Where did we come from and where are we now, right? Like, how, what are the benefits and what's the landscape of fair housing now versus where we came from, in the 40s, 50s, etc.
Wow. Well, I don't claim to be a history buff, but I tell you this. We came from not even being able to buy a home. We, meaning African Americans, were not even able to buy a home. Then the women were not able to buy, able to purchase. So we come from a long ways, as the old song says. But we have so far to go because we're still dealing with blatant discrimination. I mean, outright, you're not living in my house.
Yeah.
With different kind of words to follow. Okay. And that is going on right now in 2022. So where we're going, we have a very strong fair housing leader right now for HUD. And she has made it clear that you're not going to discriminate against, people and get away with it. And she is providing, I say she, meaning HUD, providing training to keep everybody on target for being aware of Fair Housing Discrimination Acts. All we can do, where we're going, all we can do is continue learning, continue talking to each other, continue having platforms like this, letting people know what their protections are. I can see a whole lot more work that can be done.
Sure.
The whole slumlord thing you guys were talking about earlier, that is a problem. That is a huge problem. And it's a problem all over the world. To
be like that could potentially get worse with the lack of inventory in housing.
Yes.
And rental prices skyrocketing.
Yes.
It's to me like it's only bound to get worse if we don't actively press against it.
Right. And it is my wish that I wish we could that hopefully something profound will be done about holding people accountable for not providing, that kind of place to live. That is a huge issue, a huge issue. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we've come a long way and we have so much further to go. But the good thing is I can see positive things happening through HUD and their leadership and their, providing different opportunities for us as people that work. And this is what I did say early on. The Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, we're considered a fair housing assistance program. Okay, so if someone submit a complaint to HUD, they're going to send it to our office. Because this is the region that
you're the local jurisdiction.
Right. So I see us continuing to grow. I see us continuing to educate, and to me, that's the key. That's why I want the investigators to be able to go out and teach fair housing all over the state, to big businesses, to small mom and pops, whomever need it.
Yeah.
They need to get that information.
Well, Mary, we definitely want to get you into our brokerage.
For sure.
Because we're part of one of the largest brokerages here in the state of Georgia. So we would know that there would be a welcome space for that. But
yes.
I have a question too. I was thinking a little bit as to what you were saying, as it links back to education. That's something that Michael and I are so connected to is I really do think that education is the one gap that all of us can help to bridge, because I can't necessarily help you make more money. I can work to advocate for opportunities that may allow for affordability. I can certainly help to point you to advocates and also speak up on our own regard as it relates to equality. But education for sure is something that we can all bank into and really pour resources into.
Yes.
And I'm even thinking too, specifically as it relates to those that are under a lease agreement, right? Whether it's with a property management company of a detached residential home or a building. I would love for you to talk a little bit, Mary, if you can, about things that people may or may not know that they have protections for as it relates to, let's say, for example, I've got black mold growing, like it's on my roof.
That's a huge issue.
Right? And I have made 3 or 4 inquiries to my property management company to take care of it, and nothing gets done. In a situation like that, what rights does a person have? Because at that point, it's about health. It's about sustainability. It's literally about the safety of your own life. How does that tie into fair housing?
And that's exactly how it ties into it. It has to be a nexus between the incident that they're describing has to connect to the class that you're a member of. Okay. And if that particular class you're talking about at that moment sounds like it could be disability, right? If someone says, Ms. Melvin, your situation that you just described, and it's affecting my breathing. I have asthma. And I can't breathe with this mold. Then we would investigate that.
Got it.
Now, if that same situation is not connected to one of the classes, then they need to contact code enforcement, period.
Got it.
Okay? It has to connect to the class in order for us to be able to investigate it.
Perfect. Well, and also too, probably it would require them to maybe dig back into that lease agreement and also make sure that, because within all that fine print, there's probably something to be aware of.
Exactly.
There's so many situations where, maybe it's not mold, it could be something else, right? But when you've made continual requests for repair and it's been denied, people have that ability to break that lease without any kind of consequence, because what has happened basically is the landlord has become derelict. So in that regard, it could get messy, because I think a lot of people
it will.
They don't want to abide by the law. So, but the truth is, in that kind of situation, the tenant is the one who's protected, because I've done everything that you asked me to do. I've gone above and beyond in terms of bringing it to you. I've continuously been denied. So therefore, I'm in a position where I can walk out of that without you demanding anything in return from me, because and I want to say something too about that lease thing. A lot of times, like you said, fine print, people do not read the lease. Right.
Okay. And if I could offer any suggestions to people that are renting, read the lease. Look at it and see, just take a moment. A lot of times you're in a hurry, you're in the midst of moving in, and you just want to sign the paper and pay your money and get your key. Look at the lease and see what is the tenant responsible for?
Mhm.
What is the landlord responsible for? And how you can get out of the lease.
Yep.
Okay, because I know a situation where there was a lease and the box was checked that the landlord could terminate the lease, but the box was also, and then the box was checked where the tenant could not terminate the lease. How ridiculous is that?
Yes.
But
why would you give over your rights to that if you didn't have to?
But you didn't know. So
Yeah,
here
right.
again, back to education. Most people believe that people are not going to go out of their way to do someone wrong. You sign a lease, most people are not going to think, well, they're not going to do that to me, intention. Oh, I don't know about that. Read the lease.
Yeah.
See what the little check boxes are, because they very well could be setting you up.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing, we always talk about our biggest goal. We have 3 things that we always prioritize when it comes to our clients, and that's preparing them well. That means positioning them well, and that means protecting them well. And so even when we go to write up an offer, which is a contract, it's making sure they understand every single term of that contract, making sure they know every single deadline and contingency period and the implications of what happens if we go past this, if it doesn't, we don't meet the requirements, if we don't turn earnest money in, making sure that you fully understand the legally binding contract that you are signing. That is what a lease is, right? We have these different terms and these different phrases, these euphemisms for contract. And we took the time to say, okay, would you like to sign this contract to live in this apartment complex? We would all be a little bit more about reading all of that fine print.
Right. Yeah. And we don't realize until we've had an experience, or we know somebody that had an experience, and then we can say, hey, make sure you do this, make sure you look at that.
Exactly.
It's too late for some.
I think our tendency as a Western civilization for that instant gratification, like you were saying, it's like, oh, I just want to move in.
Yeah.
Get it done. No, come on, y'all. There is so much at stake. There are so many contingencies that are technically there for you, but you've got to be aware of them.
Exactly.
Right. And if they're not aligned the way that you need them to be, you first of all need to figure out if you have room to change that. If they change and they're still not favorable to you, they're still not protecting you, don't move forward with that thing.
Slow it down. Slow that process down.
And that's my fear in this climate that we're in, Mary, as you've experienced too, just being a recent home buyer, that there is a freneticism that unfortunately I think is cultivated quite often by agents. It's not just the news cycle or whatever, but agent who is it, and I hate to say it, but I feel like they have commission breath, and it's like, look, I need you to look, I've shown you 15 houses, can you just pick one? They say it just like that, but there's that energy behind it, right? There's that vibe behind it. And Michael and I talk about this all the time. We really do think, and we even hear wind of it already starting within the next couple of years. I think there are going to be a lot of cases or complaints brought against agents and brokerages, and other members of that are adjacent to the real estate realm, because people did not fully realize what they were stepping into. Right. You know what I mean?
I think that first of all, I'm always giving props to my realtor, because she was dynamic.
That's so great.
We looked at, and I'm going to exaggerate, 1,000 houses. I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating.
Sounds about right.
Okay, but it probably felt like 1,000 to her. But we looked at a lot of houses, and she would always say, "It's okay. Maybe this is not our house. It's okay." Now I'm about to lose my mind. She was calm and cool. So was my husband. I was the only one in the group that was going crazy. But she's like, "It's okay. Maybe it's not our house. It's okay." That's what's needed. People like you, people like her, real professionals that are not focused on the commission. Like you said, it's not commission, brother. It is quality, giving people what they need.
Absolutely.
Educating them, being patient and understanding and knowledgeable, understanding your neighbor, your area that you're serving. I would see a house online and I would call her and I'll say, what about this house? What do you know about this house? And if she didn't know, she's like, well, I don't know, but I'll get back with you. I call somebody and find out, What I didn't want to do is move into a neighborhood that is still changing, still, building on. I ain't want no phase 2 or phase 3 to come in and tear up my whole life, so
exactly. Watch out
live in a
those,
stable neighborhood.
And those trucks coming through.
Right. So she knew what we wanted as far as, our wants and then our needs. And that's what's needed. We need professionals, but I'm afraid that, like you said, down the road, things are going to look so different because it's changing. But I hope we can somehow tilt it back around and make it look more like, you guys, make it look more like my realtor. Because I talked to a realtor one time. This was not my realtor, but I talked to this other realtor one time and I looked at this house. And the money that I was wanting to spend, you know what he told me? Well, good luck on that, because the market is so fierce that I don't know if you can find a house with that amount. I thought to myself, well, you won't be my realtor, that's for sure.
But also, that's not your judgment call to make.
He said that. He said that. And here again, I'm the Fair House Division Director.
Yeah.
You don't even know, you know what I'm saying? You don't even know you're talking to somebody that's knowledgeable.
Have the opportunity to say, do you know who I work for?
I didn't even do it.
Who I am?
I didn't do it because at that moment I was a customer,
Right.
I just looked at him thinking, you know what? Thank you for showing me this house. And I just walked away. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's so many times during that whole process that these people could have been held accountable.
Yeah.
But I chose not to because, number one, like you said, did you get the house that you want? Yes, we did. So the house really wasn't worth the fight. It would have been worth the fight to educate him.
Sure.
That's probably what I should have done. But I was blown away. And in a situation like this, you don't want to use your position to make a difference. You see what I'm saying? So I was very careful about that. I didn't say anything about my position because I don't want people to think, well, she's using that to get
like a bully stick coming through. You know what I mean?
Never said a word. Never said a word.
Well, but you did by not saying it. So your action was not proceeding with him, which the hope is that there's going to be enough. I don't want anyone to experience unnecessary pain at all. But my hope is that through those kinds of interactions, somebody will fall out of the system by attrition. Right. It's not always true. Sometimes you have those bad apples that just stay in.
True.
But the hope is that after enough, you're literally just going to be losing clients because nobody to work with.
No one wants to do business with you because you're
an idiot and you're just you're awful. You know what I mean? Right. But I would love, and I don't know an answer to this, even just going beyond teaching small businesses and brokerages and other organizations. I want to figure out, how do we reintroduce the tenants and here's where we were back in, prior to 68 and even all these adjustments that have happened since then. What is the refresher that we can give consumers as it relates to housing? Because I think that there is an assumption that people know what it is and that I'm quote unquote protected. But I think you're absolutely right. I don't think any real consumer fully understands those ins and outs. And I would love to figure out ways to partner with other organizations or churches or civic center, whatever that is, to create some kind of ongoing education and say, no, look, this is available to you and it's for you.
I think that refresh button you're talking about can be pushed when realtors are getting their license.
Yeah.
I think it can be pushed when, because the real estate commission, that would be an ideal place for that to happen. That if fair housing laws are encouraged or kind of almost shoved down your throat, so to speak, during that whole process that you're working toward getting that license, that would help a lot. That would help a whole lot. That's on the real estate end of things. But now here, the huge thing with the property managers, I'm not sure where that button can be pushed at, other than, unfortunately, when, complaints are filed, that's when we educate them. I can't think of of how you can really connect with property managers like you can with real estate agents, because you have real estate commission.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mull on it because I think it's something that we need.
Yeah,
I do too.
It definitely needs to be a creative collaboration there of some sort. Well, Mary, it has been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for all of the great information that you've shared with us. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, educating us on fair housing. As we wrap up, what is one thing that you would like to leave our audience with?
I would say, as we mentioned earlier, education. Understand what your rights are. Look online. Try to find information according to your situation. Education.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this third episode of Housing a Gothic Tale. Thank you so much again, Mary, for joining us. We'll make sure that the website that she referenced, we'll get that link and put it in the show notes. We'll make sure it's on our resource landing page. We have one more episode in this series coming up in just a little bit. We're going to be looking at the future, sort of future casting, what it looks like to imagine housing possibilities that are equal, accessible, potentially affordable for as many people as possible. And so we invite you to join us for that. If you have missed any of our episodes, go back and check them out. Also, Feeding Beatrice runs January 27th through February 6th at Aurora Theatre, so we hope to see you at the theater. I'm Justin. This is Michael. Thanks again to Mary. And we are the Welcome Home Atlanta team. Thank you again to Aurora Theatre for your partnership, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.